Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Takahol, friends of the library, Westchester County of Legislator that made this last but not least class. I am looking forward to our class number 8. As a reminder, this is our group of classes provided to you by the Takahol Library. And this series of classes had a total of 7 classes that are already presented and they are available through the website. So if you are watching this video tonight with us, if you're live, don't worry, we're going to go through each one of the details. But if you have time, go back and you're going to enjoy the total of 7 classes. And today we're going to wrap up everything that we've learned in this 8 classes series called Understanding Architecture. And we're going to summarize everything we learned and pretty much understand how we're going to apply all of this knowledge that we were able to acquire throughout the program. All righty, so today I'm calling this class the Gran Finale, and let's use all we have learned, and this is how. To start, I would like to give you a reminder of everything that we went through. Our class number 1 was about the history of architecture and town planning. We went through a delightful journey into the magical insights that governs the principles of every single building around us. Yes, we went through it with details, including sharing bibliography, including sharing links to websites that we can go deep into that subject. So it was a very interesting start to understanding architecture. And then we jumped to our second class in the program, which was understanding the very basics of architecture. In this class of the series, we went through techniques on how to draw and how to understand an architectural set of plans, including floor plans, elevations, sections, and it keeps going. We went through it all. Number 3, we had a class where we were talking about drawing and writing as an architect. We were trying to understand why all the architects, all the engineers, they almost have the same calligraphy, and why this is almost the same everywhere you go throughout the planet. There is a reason behind it, and we were able to give the basics on how to do that ourselves and how to keep practicing to draw like that. Then class number 4, it was how lighting sets the mood of everything around us. We even went beyond and say how everything can look happy, sad, spooky, romantic, energetic. It all depends on the space, of course, but one of the main reasons of us having this feeling of that feeling, it's because of lighting. We learned why. Then class number 5, you see here, we were talking about corporate, healthcare, and retail design. We shared a few key items on design, the secrets behind what we see wherever we go. Then we even spoke about code compliance. Yes, we're talking about New York State codes, and what are those? What are the local codes from different municipalities? And why it's so important that we comply with the rules and regulations behind all of these codes that were written and implemented throughout the time. And finally, our class number 7 was about interior design and how beautiful places are made, the principles of creating harmony in interior design. And that's how we wrapped up all of this background knowledge that we acquired throughout the 7 classes. And today we're going to wrap it up with interesting insights that will make it easy for you to instantly apply that to your daily life. Okay, so what exactly we learned when we spoke about the history of architecture and town planning? Well, basically we went through the idea that architecture is all around us, right? And then in this big white box here, we see that architecture began, said the German architect Louis van der Rohe, who was born in 1886, and unfortunately he left us in 1969, when two bricks were put together, well, that's architecture. This might sound very easy, and yet he was right. What he meant was that architecture is a self-conscious act of building, not just with common sense, but with artistry too. It is also the will of an epoch translated into space. That's why we go through different urban places, right? Or different cities, different municipalities, and we feel that was a translation of a certain era. And to that, if you remember, some of you were with us during those classes, we compared two famous train stations in New York City. Penn Station, the old version of Penn Station or Pennsylvania Station, and Grand Central Terminal. So Penn is on our left, Grand Central is on our right. They both translate their era, their main characteristics for modern architecture or for a more traditional architecture, or some of us would say classic architecture. So the importance of architecture, as you can see, is as it roots, architecture exists to create the physical environment in which people live. But architecture is way more than just the built environment. It's a part of our culture. It stands as a representation of how we see ourselves, as well as how we see the world. In that class, we were able to go through our background knowledge and see places around the world in our imagination and see, okay, if we were right now in a place where it's too hot, and might be the case where we don't have air conditioning. So you imagine all of those pieces of architecture with huge balconies, able to transform the air that comes inside that architecture into a cross ventilation, more shaded areas, and so on and so forth. Pretty much a translation of different cultures, of different, even to be honest with you, even on how we address different level of total amount of money you have to invest on an architecture. That's all translated to how we see the final result. While the concept of shelter is a fairly simple thing, the style of buildings was originally shaped by the climate of a particular location, what materials were readily available, as well as the values of the society building them. As you can see, as the world became more and more connected, the styles evolved. But even in modern construction, there is still an importance in honoring the cultural nuances in built environment. And to that, I would like to share with you a very interesting piece of knowledge in our Grand Central Terminal. Grand Central Terminal is one of the first places around the world to use ramp in a public transportation building in order to help people to move fast. I don't know if you heard that before, but yes, if you ever been to Grand Central Terminal in New York City, there is a huge ramp connecting the main ground floor to the underground where we have the food court. And that ramp was the very, very, very first idea to move people fast, because before people were just being transported from one floor to the other quickly enough through the set of stairs. So you see how architecture reflects the needs of a population. It also, it's a translation of that specific time, what was needed, and creative solutions that were back then addressed. All right, so that was our class number 1, and all of those details that we discussed summarized. And then in class number 2, you can see that we were understanding the basics of architecture. To do that, we started by defining the word architecture. And the word architecture is basically the art and technique of designing and building, as distinguished from the skills associated with construction. The practice of architecture is employed to fulfill both practical and expressive requirements, and thus it serves us. It serves both utilitarian and aesthetics ends. These two ends cannot be separated, and the relative weight given to each can vary widely. All right, to that, I'll give you an example. Let's say your next project, and that's why you're here watching this class today. Your next project is to help your family by creating the main concept of your new home. So you went through the first class, you learned about the history of architecture, you know a little bit more about how to appreciate the world around you, how to get inspiration from, let's say, the beautiful building you have across the street from the place where you live, or from the train station that you take your transportation to go to work every day, or you went to your, I don't know, let's say, for example, your dentist office and you were really finding a beautiful piece of art on the wall, right? So now you want to translate that into a floor plan. In this class that we had, we were able to understand, you see on the right, the dimensions. We were using graph paper, we were using scale, we were using tape measurements, we were understanding what inches and feet meant. And if you look at our, let's go back. If you look here on our right-hand side, units of length, we were understanding how it translates. It translates, for example, 1 foot, you have 12 inches, 1 yard, total of 3 feet, 1 yard can be also 36 inches, the translation from feet to inches, 1 mile, and so on and so forth. So we went through that, and little by little, we were able to use the graph paper to draw something like you see on the bottom left-hand side, which was a tiny house floor plan. We have an explanation in that class on how to represent door. As you can see here, this is, if you see my cursor is pointing to our front door, it's pretty much to scale because we determined how much each one of those squares were representing. So this was drawn to scale. These two lines, for example, were representing the window on the floor plan, and these two lines are representing the window sill. So this would be probably the glass, and this here are the window sill. That's why we were talking about line weight, because this is pretty much a floor plan is a section horizontally made throughout your place, or the place that is being represented in the floor plan. So line weight matters. That's why you see a very thick line here around this shaded area in gray, because it's representing that the wall is being cut. This is representing the door is being cut. And this line is actually representing the swing of the door. And then when we go all the way to the back, this is representing another type of door that we won't swing open, but instead we're going to slide inside the partition called pocket door. Another style here of a transparent line in a floor plan is represented in this shower pan. This center circle is representing the floor drain, and these lines here representing the angle the water is making in order to be drained in there. And this line here, it represents a step either upwards or downwards to access this shower pan. And then we walked through how other symbols are used to represent things in a floor plan. So a floor plan is usually a horizontal section, as I said before, in your whole entire building, and is usually a horizontal section cut about 3'6" above ground. That's why you see this toilet represented like this, and this cabinets represented in a way that you can see them from above. In this case, this is the oven with the 4 outlets right here. This is the sink by the window. And when you see the dashed lines are actually representing what is above this cut area, because you are still able to see what's above. You need to represent that. So usually you go with the dashed line, and it's ideal that you represent that with a leader line telling you what those are. So in this case, it says 12 inches deep, cabinet above. So if you look here, this is to scale, because each one of those squares, to represent that, we were saying there was going to be a 6 inches by 6 inches square. So 6 inches here, half of that 6 is 3, plus another 3, that gave us 12. And if you need more details, let's go back to that class. And that's how we are able to use all of the things we've learned. In the class number 3, we were really understanding the power of drawing and writing as an architect. And we were saying, how did it all start, right? Where did we start? For centuries before computers, all stages of the architectural design process, it was drafted on paper, all stages, from creation all the way to what we call today construction set of drawings. Even when computer drawing technology emerged, many architects relied on their pens for their initial ideas. You see here in the bottom, this example. This is an example on how conceptual drawings really start. Living legends like Frank Gehry still begin designing new buildings, crazy buildings with freehand drawings. Though pen and ink working drawing will ultimately lead to AutoCAD drawings, which is one type of software that's pretty well known among the industry users, drawings in computer software, there's still a role for architectural drawing by hand. Consider these 10 steps. So I'm going to remind you those 10 steps right now, and suggestions to improve hand drawing techniques. I always say to those who listen to me talking about hand drawing, that when we learn how to draw, we pretty much alphabetizing our hands, because to draw is a way to translate what is in our mind. That most of us is really able to think about what you want, but we're not able to express. The moment you learn how to draw, you're able to express the vision you have. And so look at this drawing here. As you can see, this was inside someone's brain, and through that drawing, he was able to translate all of the ideas inside their brain. It's a very unique tool to know how to draw, and it's, I would say, is way more important if we put weight on how to draw things only in the computer, because you can use that right away in a simple sketch. You can show your client maybe what they are envisioning and they are not being able to put on paper. It's a very valuable tool. So if whomever is watching us tonight is an architecture student who is not understanding, why do I need to learn how to sketch? All I need to do right now is to put that in the computer. That's not true. Just go for that skill, keep practicing, you're not wasting your time. So how you learn how to sketch? Pretty much following these 10 steps will give you a great start. Number 1, assemble the right tools. Architectural drawings benefit from precision. So as an architect or someone who enjoys learning how an architect draw, you need precise tools. In addition to pencils, invest in some permanent markers, for example, both fine point and ultra fine point, rulers, a protractor, a compass, and many rolls of tracing paper. They are absolutely a must-have. Paper size, as shown, can be appropriate for getting down your initial thoughts. And as shown, we had a sketch there, and I'm talking about letter size and 11 by 17 inches, a type of paper. If we are being watched by people overseas, you go for the A4 and A3 size, which is the more European style of paper. Number 2, it's very important to know how to hold your pen. So ideally, you go near the tip. That way, your sketch will have more precision. Precisely, most of the architects, they sketch very close to the tip. You hold your pen like that, and you make your strokes more accurate. Number 3, to keep lines straight, you should move your entire arm. So that's how you're going to do to create the shapes. So no shape is more important in drawing architecture than a simple straight line. And if you want to draw straight lines without a ruler, the key is to lock your wrist and elbow. By moving your entire arm from the shoulder, you will quickly sharpen your drawing skills. Use shading, color, and variety of line weight. That's our suggestion number 4. An architectural project has depth, like we saw in the floor plan that was shown before. And dimensionally, we can use all of those tools throughout the drawing. So if you look at this sketch on the left-hand side, you're going to see that we used a variety of shades, a variety of depths, line weight. Some modern architecture students and professionals even liven up their drawings with watercolor. So this here on the left, it's not watercolor, but it's a specific highlighter for that it makes wonders on how you create the shades. Number 5, study other forms of drawing. Yes, to improve the architectural drawings, diversify your drawing ability. Study with a professional artist, for example, as part of your training. And this experience will enable you to draw beyond the limits of simple geometric shapes. Remember the definition that we saw before. Architecture is a type of art. And then number 6, understand the purpose of sketching. Freehand drawing isn't meant to compete with digital technology when it comes to measurement and perfection. A free drawing offers the most important thing, which is inspiration. So the moment you understand that the main purpose of sketching is inspire you and others, then you will be free to make mistakes. Use your concept sketches to think big and outside the box. Later on, you can use digital tools to achieve the structural precision that is required for a final construction of the work. Number 7, you must integrate landscape architecture and interior design ideas always. Contemporary schools of architecture, they do encourage students to think of the built environment as more than just structural building design. Because yes, architectural plans must include not only floor plans, sections drawings, perspective drawings, and construction details, but they can also include interior design details and landscaping. Sometimes we call it populating the drawings. So in this scene right here on the left, you see that the architect involved not only the building he has in mind, but he created a sidewalk, he put a relationship with whatever is next to it. But ideally, we show to our clients, or if you're doing your own project, think about not only the space you are envisioning, but what goes inside that space. And if you need some landscape, let's say it's only an interior project, just think about what kind of plans you want to bring to that plants you want to bring to that environment. If you want to create a more green space, if you're going to have a temporary or a permanent garden, stuff like that. Then number 8, keep a sketchbook. Yes, a sketchbook like the one you see on the left-hand side, because in addition to tracing paper, keeping a sketchbooks to jot down ideas or render basic architectural forms for future projects will bring you to a whole new scenario. You can carry the sketchbook with you because a great artist must be prepared when inspiration strikes. Yes, he might be with you just walking on the street and see this beautiful tree. You say, yes, you know what? This tree would be perfect for my backyard. And let me sketch what this tree looked like and would be, for example, a bench right under it. Number 9, draw freely without second guessing yourself. Your drawings exist for your own inspiration, and they don't have to be seen by anyone else. So don't be afraid of drawing something and say, oh, I don't draw well, it's going to look awful. Because you need to build up your sketching skills if you want your doodles to eventually give way to architectural renderings. But when you start sketching, allow yourself to follow your inspiration. Draw for yourself without the weight of judgment or perfectionism. And number 10, to wrap up drawing and writing as an architect summary, observe and practice drawing. That is a rule of thumb to all around you in details. Take photos, make videos. You can constantly document your own background and personal experiences while registering it all for future references. Drawings are all about knowing how to represent reality. Do not give up. All right. And when we said drawing and writing as an architect, and we spoke about assembling tools, I thought it was important to show because some of the names might sound unfamiliar to some of you. A tracing paper, for example, on the right-hand side, it looks like this. It's a transparent, usually a roll of paper. This is available online. But for example, if you're reading a book and you just saw this beautiful bouquet of flowers and you want to sketch over it, that's the power of the tracing paper. Sometimes you can't draw it on your own, but tracing it over, paying attention to the shapes, to the shades of it, will help you learn by yourself. That's what I meant by rulers. We have a variety of rulers. These ones will help you with the angles or perspectives. This is the protractor and the compass right here. Things like that will help you assemble a beautiful drawing. This is what we call graph paper, and those little squares, the moment you judge what you want this to be, it will help you draw to scale without too much effort. And then this is what I mean by permanent markers. There are ones with broad and there are other ones with very fine twin tips. They are wonderful and they are a beautiful tool to make you draw as an architect. This was one fun class, and for those of you who were part of those classes, how lighting sets the mood of everything around us. We were in Halloween time, and during Halloween, we were just going back into our imagination and remembering all of those orange lights, darker places, and how that immediately brings us to that crazy Halloween mood. All right, so if that can bring us to a Halloween mood, like I said, spooky, it can always be bringing us to another place, like a happy place, a sad place, a romantic environment, even energetic, like let's say you go into the gym. See how important it is to have the right lighting for the right project. So next time, let's say, for example, now you're doing your own room and you don't want to do everything that you learned throughout this class, but you want your bedroom to have a new feeling. This class was talking about color temperature. So if you have your next trip to Home Depot on schedule, pay attention to the area where they have something called warm light and cool light. Warm light usually go towards a low number of Kelvin. Kelvin is the unit that gives you the total amount of light. So usually a very warm light would be 1700 Kelvin. Very cool light will be something like 5000 Kelvin. That range will bring you to a whole different mood. In this picture that we have right here in the center of a library, we, for example, there have very warm light. This should probably be a yellow tone connected to something such as 2700 Kelvin. You feel a cozier environment when you have that kind of light. So setting the mood with light was teaching us how artificial lighting can affect human instinct, your feelings in an environment. We were even suggesting everybody who already learned the importance of keeping that sketchbook. The ideal scenario, it's right how you feel in that space. As humans, we are naturally inclined to be attracted by light. Light is what makes us reach for objects. It's what makes us go to one place or the other. So why is lighting essential to architecture? The answer may seem obvious. but it should not be, because it's impossible to imagine a space without lighting, right? Well, some projects do forget the importance of lighting. They don't even tell their architect what color temperature to buy those light bulbs, but it will change everything. In a kitchen, for example, will change the color of the food. You might feel more in a hospital than you might feel in a supermarket. In this class, we also invited our participants to go back in their imagination and remember their last trip to a grocery store. Did you have too much light, too little light? Did you have yellow light or cold light, like towards the blue? Did you have far away from the product light or closer to the light? Usually, if you have light fixtures very close to the product, that will help people to be attracted and buy more. So, ironically, lighting is often one of the less components factored into a project budget, far behind materials, plumbing, or even equipment. It's sad, but it's true. Chances are that next time you really enjoy a project, it's because you will be beautifully and perfectly well lit. Not too much, not too little, but just perfect for that specific use. Still, it's crucial feature that gives life to any project. It should not be regarded as a mere add-on. And with that said, I now invite you to discover the ways in which lighting can shape individuals' experience in a given space, how lighting can set the mood to your environment. And that invitation comes connected with this box right here and this picture right here, because light plays a central role in the design of a visual environment. Yes, it does. The architecture, people, and objects are all made visible by lighting. It's a very straightforward thing, but we take it for granted. Light influences our well-being, the aesthetic effect, and the mood of a room or an area. That I would like you to write down on your notes right now. It is light that first enables what we see. Yes, this is the important. It's so important to have the right lighting in any project. Think about it. Let's go look at this room. You see how natural lighting is blending everything around this room? It feels very welcoming. Nothing is blocking the light. And chances are that at night, when it's not as beautifully washed by natural light, you're going to need to turn on those two table lamps. And that will make it very cozy, correct? You're going to transition from natural light to artificial lighting. Our perception of architecture will be influenced by light. Light defines zones and boundaries. Light expands and accentuates rooms. Light creates links and delineates one area from another. This is one beautiful wheel of emotions that we walked our participants through in this class, and I invite you to take a photo of this screenshot. It's a very cool wheel of emotions. Let's say, for example, if you relate your room now is going to be all yellow, chances are that these are the emotions connected to that specific color: ecstasy, joy, serenity. And then if you go closer to the pink, where you start mixing with orange, you trigger all of these emotions. And again, this is part of different studies. That's how they got to this wheel of emotion, and that's the name of this study right here. So from now on, the summary of this class was: start a personal notebook of quick motions. So wherever you go, start paying attention to the light, the amount of light, the light color, the location of the light. Is it in the ceiling, on the floor, both wall and ceiling? Is it too bright? Is it bothering you, your eyes? Write down the place where you are, how the lighting mood is affecting you. What do you feel? And then bring back to this photo you're taking today for this wheel of emotions. Said, wow, I went to that. I'll give you an example. I went to that hospital, and that hospital was more like a hotel than anything else. So that made me feel more joy than fear. Back then, hospitals were associated mostly with the colors blue and green. And if you go to newly renovated hospitals these days, they are connecting their architecture to what they call hospitality architecture. So they are staying away from very cool colors and going to colors that will make you feel if you were in a hotel, if you were in a pretty much by the beach, by the ocean, or in a very happy place. They want to trigger different emotions so you stay away from apprehension, fear, or you too distracted. Even sadness, grief, all of those emotions, they're trying to keep you away from that. So number 3, note where the source of light is coming from. Like we were just saying, it can even be coming from indirect light. 4, what colors are the light bulbs? Sometimes you're just going to say, I don't know what color that is, but you see it's towards orange or it's towards blue. So write that down. You identify what amount of Kelvin most likely you have. You're going to see that on Home Depot, like we said. And finally, number 5, when you write down those emotions, are there any types of shades covering the bulbs? Most of the time, you're going to find either what we call the parabolic grill, or you're going to find a piece of plexi in front of those light fixtures, or if it's a table lamp, maybe there is a shade in front of it. Write it down and see how it changes the ambience. Okay, we spoke a little bit about it before, but one of those classes were about corporate, healthcare, and retail design. And this was fun. We even went through Google, how Google was designing their space for their employees, because that's, remember, sometimes we take it for granted. We just go to all of these spaces we use, but we forget that this is also architecture. So we had a few key points that were taken away from that class. One was in corporate, healthcare, and retail design. We were understanding the consumer habits and how it's a part of commercial design duties. Architects in this sector, they also know how to best approach design for their clients' specific facility type and specific business operations. This includes accommodating the particular equipment, merchandise, and storage of their business. Accommodating business operations often requires extra infrastructure as well. Architects working on commercial projects, they must be able to strategically incorporate elevators, parking lots, and other features that would rarely be seen in the residential sphere. It's very interesting. I'll invite you to go back in your memory once again and see if you ever been to the post office, right? Do you have only the area where you see the person assisting you, or you also have the area for load and unload? You also have the area where you can drop off your belongings. Whatever it is, it's a whole accommodation of business operation, and that's part of architecture. Overall, commercial design must account for the way that the client's business functions on a day-to-day basis. It should enable all business activities not only to be comfortable, but also as efficient as possible. And that goes back to our example of the post office. Another great example is the pharmacy. A pharmacy has all the way in the back our pharmacy department, and in the front you have everything else going on. But the logistic of it was taken into consideration. This is true whether the client is serving customer in a retail store or having a tooth removed in a dental office. Now, there's two very important last scenarios is corporate healthcare and retail design requires a sharp business sense with an eye for future. Materials must be durable and resist the test of time. We spoke about logistic of these places. We spoke about understanding the business operations. Now, did you ever stop to think about that the material of whatever chair you're sitting when you go to your doctor's office needs to be durable, needs to be cleanable? Chances are that it needs to pass flammability control for the fire department because it's a business. All of that is part of what the architectural drawings are planning for the retail, healthcare, corporate. It needs to pass the test of time. Architects in these sectors, they must be able to design a facility that will be suitable for many years to come. They should also spot opportunities to give their clients a competitive edge. One great example is the Tuckahoe Library, soon to undergo a big renovation. One of the things that we have in mind redesigning the library is if it's going to have the perfect new floor, if it's going to pass the test of time, if it's going to be durable, if it's going to be safe, it's not going to be slippery. So the same thing goes for all the other finishes that are going to be applied, which tells us that successful commercial design can adapt to market trends and allow for this business or for this institution to grow. And then I'll be quick on this one because code compliance, I really need you all to watch that class. But the key point is that code enforcement can improve the public health and safety. Adoption and enforcement of the most up-to-date codes reflect the jurisdiction increased knowledge and commitment to ensuring the health and safety of its citizens. It's very important that we learn that and that statement came from one of my colleagues at work. He says, we have to remember that the rules we enforce were written in blood. Yes, it's sad, but it's true. Most of the building codes that we use are laws that were written because someone had an accident, people died, huge fires in the history of the United States, for example, were part of people sitting together and writing new codes, writing new rules and regulations. Codes are not arbitrary regulations. They uphold a democratically derived minimum level of quality and public health safety for the buildings. It's a collection of laws, regulations, ordinances, or other statutory requirements adopted by a government legislative authority involved with the physical structure and healthful conditions of buildings and building sites. So basically, if you look at this right-hand side model that was put together by ICC, which means International Code Council, it's a core family of building codes, which is a mix of building code, electrical code, mechanical code, and plumbing code. We have more, but as a summary, who is responsible for building code? It's the enforcement team. Building codes require enforcement mechanism to ensure compliance. Code enforcement officials, they usually are trained, certified, and they have to do continual education, which is a minimum amount of hours ruled by New York State. In this case, if you're watching us from different states, there are different regulations. But usually the building safety professionals are the inspectors, the plan examiners, the permit technicians, and the building code officials, and contractor license and certification also. Who is responsible for it? All these permits, you probably, if you ever done any renovation in your business, in your home, you probably had to hang that or something similar to that on your window or someplace visible. And if something is not doing wrong, usually you have what is called a code violation. And what you see here, you're invited to take a photo, were things that we discussed that are part of the building code. For example, did you ever know the fence maintenance is part of what the building code enforces? Or for example, if your grass is too tall, you didn't cut the weeds, that is part of what we call the property maintenance code, and that can be issued as a notice of violation, so you can take care and remedy the situation. and by any reason it's really not going as per the requirements of the code, you're going to be issued a stop work order. All right, and we went through interior design. That was one of the classes. And it was really cool because we define interior design. Interior design, the profession that focuses on architecture and space planning, creating a cohesive and aesthetically pleasing design for home interiors and business. The professionals, they really require focused schooling and formal training to do the right thing. Interior design is all about how we experience space. It's a powerful, essential part of our daily lives, as we said before. And it just as like lighting was said, it does affect how we live, how we work, how we play, and even how we heal. Correct? Comfortable homes, functional workplaces, beautiful public spaces, comfortable hospitals, elegant nursing homes, a chic elevator. That's interior design at work. And we discussed the basics of interior design with 3 design principles. And I won't read this, but let's discuss it. It's style, focal point, and balance. We have an example of style, focal point, and balance in this photo on our right-hand side. And you see here, this was a beautiful example of what a project can look like using those 3 principles. This is an explanation on how a sketch starts with a 2-point or 3-point perspective. You see, this point was created here, 1, 2, 3, and that's how you start creating those walls. And then at some point, if your architect's willing to, he can create a model, a 3D model like that. And I know our time is short, but that was our wrap up of our 7 weeks, all those great opportunities to learn how to do it by yourself. So very interesting. And this is the bibliography, fundamentals of lighting. We also spoke about lighting design basics. And we spoke about home decorating for dummies. I know sometimes these books, you can just raise your eyebrows and say, oh no, really? Do I really have to borrow a book called Home Decorating for Dummies? You'll be surprised the amount of knowledge you can acquire through the reading of these books. Drawing Architecture, this is for beginners, and it's a great guide to drawing and painting buildings. It's by Richard Taylor. This was for perspective hand drawing, the fundamentals of interior design. If you really want to populate those perspectives, that was a great opportunity. Designing commercial interiors, that's another good one. And then Architecture for Dummies, it's different than the interior design. It's also worth reading those books. It gives you a great perspective and a great organization of thoughts on how to process so much information. Understanding Architecture, it's a more comprehensive one with a more advanced language. And then we have the websites. Again, I invite you to take a photo of this because this links, I did a summary of all the classes, what I think is most important. If you just have time to watch this class, and as a summary, these are the must-go-to websites. And this is specifically for drawing as an architect. So principles of line weight when sketching. These 2 great YouTube videos will help you. Have a sketchbook with you and check out these tips for your next new drawings. Sketch a floor plan and 5 things every architect need under 20 bucks. That's a fun one to watch. And now conclusion, because we only have a few minutes, and I know we have more classes to come with the Takahou Library. So please use this 8 classes program as a guide for your next architectural project. I'm sure you're going to do wonderful things. Appreciate the pieces around us, your streets, the sidewalks, the stores, the houses. The small details are absolutely everything. Take notes. Remember how natural light has the potential to enhance people's mood, creativity, and the cognitive performance. Start noticing how warm light can help create a cozy social atmosphere, while cool lighting can help create an atmosphere for focus and concentration. Hire an architect, interior designer, or a professional engineer to assist you with your next project. Follow your state and local codes. Look for building department for assistance. I'm sure you'll be able to do a much better job if you're following all the rules and regulations. Keep sketching and practicing hand drawing. Always, always be curious. Appreciate the urban design, interior design, architecture everywhere you go. Educate your eyes on how to see things. Check how climate, use, needs, and other focus were factored in after affecting the users and your perception. And to wrap up, I would like to, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for participating very, very much. It was a pleasure to be here with you throughout these 8 classes. I'm going to miss you, and I would give a special thanks, as always, to our amazing, maravilhoso, how I would say in Portuguese, marvelous Takahau Public Library team. You guys are wonderful, special. I'm honored and humbled by this opportunity. Westchester County Board of Legislators, thank you for providing this to our citizens. I really appreciate that. And don't forget, knowledge is a lifetime treasure. The more programs you participate, the more knowledge you acquire, and it's all free of charge for participants. I think we are all under a very privileged scenario for having this. So thank you all so much. It was a pleasure to be with you throughout these 5 weeks.